Well, hello there, everyone. Just having some technical difficulties for a moment there, but I think we're good. All right, hip hop pareo. Just get properly set here. Yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. Just gonna allow some peeps to trickle in, get all of this stuff. Scoot over. Don't want to be blocking El Rey behind me there. Definitely not. The hair back a little bit. Yes, I'm supporting the shooty hoops today, as y'all can see, for those who are cruising in. I'm excited for this discussion. Very much so. So happy Saturday for those rolling in. We will get started official and proper here shortly. Jacob, what is up, good sir? And I see Malito. Hey, I hope you had a great cumpleaños, man. I did a funny little thing on the Hail group for your birthday yesterday. I did some Death Clock. I know you liked it, but I didn't see you say anything. So, Malito, my brother, I hope you had an awesome birthday yesterday. I'm just sharing this out, making sure that all of the social media peoples know about this stuff. And I'm going to have a sip of my caffeine here. My crazy Gandalf goblet. Yeah, how about that guy right there? He's pretty cool. Okay, but yeah, once I get this properly shared, we will get the proceedings going properly. All about the Findies Keepies. Yay! It's actually my favorite book in the Hodges trilogy. And yeah, I'm pretty stoked. Pretty stoked. So, goddamn, man, who can believe that it is August already? It's literally blowing my mind that we are still in the midst of so much of this zaniness, and it's already August, man. Who else is cruising in? Austin is here. Yes, long days and pleasant nights to you, Simon. Okay, Mark Pearson. Beautiful, beautiful photo of your lovely little daughter there that I saw the other day on social media, man. You were blessed, good sir. You were blessed. Okay, who else? Travis Miller's jumping in. Just stopped in to say, hey, this is on my to-do list and on my shelf. I can't wait. Watch due to spoilers. Yes, I do understand, because this is definitely going to be very spoilerific, especially if you haven't even read Mr. Mercedes. I mean, there's only a couple bits that reference it here and there, but I mean, just share this to the YOU the Ka-Tet, and yeah, we've already got almost 10 people in here, so we'll just get to cruising for a bruising, as they like to say. And yes, I'm wearing this because Shooty Hoops basketball is officially back as of, Thursday, but my Suns played yesterday. The Phoenix Suns here in the deadly deserts. So, okay, live, order, constant readers. Yeah, there we go. So I'm very curious to hear everybody's thoughts about this one. And, yeah. Okay. Almost there. So close, so close. Who else is rolling in? Yes, no problem, Mark. All right, Sharon Beveridge. Hello. Oh, awesome, awesome. All right. Okay. Talking King live. All right, all right, all right. LIVIN KING side. Oh. Talking King live now. Okay. Lots of exclamation points. Need to have lots of exclamation points, everybody. It's like kind of a crucial aspect to get people to actually do the care, actually give a crap, right? Okay. Okay. Well, all the social media shizzle is goodsy. And yeah, I'm just going to get another sip of my caffeinated stuff, and we will get to rocking this proper. And we'll have at least an hour or so, if not more, depending on how much discussion we get to. And I've got my guitarist coming over this afternoon in a couple hours. Going to continue work on the album stuff, which I'm quite excited about. Oh, and then we've got 11 people. This one goes to 11. I was just watching Spinal Tap the other day. My lady hadn't seen it in a while. And I was actually amused because I forgot that on the Spinal Tap DVD release, they have a commentary track where all three of the musicians do it in character, and they're like talking shit the whole time about Rob Reiner's director character that he plays. It's some pretty funny stuff. If you guys have never seen This Is Spinal Tap, it's pretty amazing. So Okay, well, okay. Jane Adams says, hello, King Fuego. Oh, I am no king. I am just merely a messenger. That is the role that I prefer. Yes, Matty Jorson is here. Good evening, says he. Good evening to you as well. Hope it has been well, if it's evening for you, man, hope you're having a most pleasant night. Catherine Layden says, I beg to differ. Oh, boy. All right, okay. It's my favorite out of the trilogy, but I really hope King gives us a Holly break, probably in the minority there. Yeah, that's actually funny, Mark, because I've seen a lot of people expressing your sentiments where they're like, hey, we know how much you love Holly. That's why you just keep going back and going back and going back. And in some ways, The Institute, despite the fact that it was like King trying to out Stranger Things was a nice change of pace from all of the Holly storytelling. So, well, yeah, we've got like a dozen people in here now. And, yeah. Since I'm sure we all have other things to do later on in the day. Okay, Matt Jorson said, yep, 9 p.m. here in the Netherlands. Well, cheers, man, for stopping on through. Nicholas Adams says Finders Keepers was the best of the trilogy for me. Okay, well, let's get rock-a-lockin', everybody. Okay. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers, along the path of the Bizine. I'm known on this level of the tower. Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's Raising. Appreciate all of you spending some time here for the Book of the Month Club that we do here. It's in conjunction with the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, and obviously, Bienvenidos, and I welcome you here to the horror show where, yeah, I've read every Cy King book, if you're new to the proceedings here, and every month we revisit something, usually for a golden anniversary, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, you know, that sort of, you know, special increment, as they like to do. And 5 years ago, in June 2nd of 2015 to be approximate, we had the release of Finders Keepers. Yes, this was the second in the Bill Hodges trilogy. So when you think about it, like the fact that Cy King put out Finders Keepers and Revival back to back, and then I think Bizarre Bad Dreams came like right after that. This is when, especially in the 2010s, I was like, damn, he is catching his groove. He is legit between Finders Keepers and Revival. I'm like, this is like a King-a-sance of the literary variety that's transpiring. And I love both of those books. And Finders Keepers is actually, as some people in the chat were already saying, it is my personal favorite of the trilogy. Now, that's not to say that I don't like Mr. Mercedes. I love Mr. Mercedes as well. I think that's a very strong release. My lady Catherine was trying to read that one recently, and she just wasn't getting into the hard-boiled crime aspect of it. But we know King had been very much all about that for a number of years at this particular point, you know, with Colorado Kid, and even after these Bill Hodges books. I mean, the fact that, you know, returning with The Outsider, albeit with a supernatural twist. And so this is the pinnacle of the Hodges trilogy for me. I'm not the biggest fan of End of Watch, but that is for another discussion at another time. I love Finders Keepers, and I love it more so than anything because of the fact that, dare I say, it doesn't even feel as much like a Bill Hodges book. Bill Hodges doesn't even show up until like, I think like 150 something pages into it as I consult my notes here. I think it's like page 154. But yeah, and the reason I dig it is because, well, dig it as much as I do, is because it's King returning to the aspect of obsessive readers. And as you guys probably saw from the thumbnail that I put together for this, well, I guess it's not of the utmost importance. Okay, yeah. Old Pals Part 2, I believe 157 is when Bill Hodges finally shows up. So it's King revisiting the obsessive fan / reader, and he had done it a few years before this with Lacey's story, and obviously most notably and most celebrated is Misery, you know, with Miss Wilkes and everything. And so it's something that he's familiar with, but he did a much more interesting spin on this because of the fact that this is a villain and it's an obsessive one. That in Morris, but he's also like very sharp and very smart, and he comes from like a family of educated elites almost. I mean, he had a father who ran out on the family when he was younger, but was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. And so, I mean, he came from a pedigree, and he just, you know, got mixed up with the wrong crowds and had a negative upbringing. And it's always fascinating when you have a slightly sympathetic villain. And it's not like you really feel that bad for Morris, you know, our villainous antagonist here. But he's definitely complex in the aspect that, we do have some backstory that makes you at least understand what helped to create this massive monster that he is. And it's really fascinating. And, Cecil and I, along with Robert Dwell here on the channel, have been doing retro reviews of all of the Hellraiser films. And the example that I'm making here is that there were a few of those Hellraiser sequels later on in the series where they had a spec script. So they had a script that was already going to be, its own thing. And they essentially retrofitted it, and they added some Pinhead in there and some, Cenobite stuff, whatever. And they essentially turned the film into a Hellraiser movie with like a few variations. And that's one of the things that I could almost see this, like, you could take Hodges out, Hodges and Holly and Jerome, because, we get a decent amount of them, but not like a massive, massive amount. This is really more so than anything Morris's story and Peter's story. And dare I say, this almost feels like a retrofit job to some degree, in the fact that I believe you could take, the very scant references to Brady and, Jerome and his sister, and obviously, Holly and Bill, you could really take them out, and this story could still stand on its own and still be incredibly compelling, because that is really, it's the crux, and it's the majority, it's really the guts of the story, and the inevitable confrontation with this obscenely obsessive reader in Morris, who he's so obsessed about this John Rothstein guy that he decides to break in and try to steal manuscripts and all this different stuff. It's really compelling stuff, but the point being that this is a story that I think you could take all the Hodges trilogy references out and just make it about Peter and Maury, and it would still be equally compelling. In some ways, dare I say, Hodges and Holly and Jerome and, the two little scenes with Brady that we get in here, they don't so much feel out of place. They don't stick out like a sore thumb, but in some ways, they're almost like just icing on a cake. Dare I say, maybe not as necessary. So that's at least just opening thoughts and remarks and stuff like that. And obviously, as always, I've got pages of notes. I've got like notebooks of notes after over 220 episodes of this program at this particular point. But so I am going to take a sip of my cold brew in my Gandalf goblet, and I'm going to just take a quick peek at what everybody else has to say before launching into this Trappa. And obviously, give me all of your thoughts about this. It is definitely why we are all here, for this sort of palaver. Okay, so 9 p.m. Yep, we got that from Maddie already. Nicholas Adam is here. Finders Keepers. Yep, we got that already. I was referring to the King comment. Andrew T says, Andrew, what is up, man? Hope you are doing well on this fine Saturday. Thanks so very much for tuning in, good sir. Caleb says, let's go. Maddie says, I don't like the Mr. Mercedes much. Finders Keepers is really the best, mainly because part 1 is amazing. Yeah, part 1 is really, once we get into Old Friends part 2 and we start folding in all of the Hodges stuff, that's where, not so much that the book loses steam in my personal estimation, but as I said just a moment ago, the most compelling stuff in here is Peter and, the inevitable confrontation with Morris. Also, Morris's friend who runs the bookstore, in Andy or Drew or whatever the hell he's calling him, his gay former friend, who was also like a literary savant and whatnot. And also Peter's relationship with his super cool teacher, trying to remember, Ricker. So, yeah, Mr. Ricker, that's right. And you can definitely tell in this story, he's reaching back not only into instances I would imagine that he's encountered with obsessive fans, but also, King taught English and literature and stuff like that on both the high school and the collegiate level. And this is definitely, with some of the Ricker stuff, you can tell that King is reaching into his own personal experiences, and it feels so much more authentic because of that. And this is just a book that is a celebration of just writing and great literature in general. So that's definitely one of the reasons why I love this oh so very much. Okay, Maddie continues with saying, unfortunately, when Hodges and friends come in, it takes a bit of a nosedive. The narrative relies too much on coincidence again, instead of playing out through the investigative detective skills. Yeah, and that's where I said, it feels like King had a story and a very strong, solid foundation. And then he loves Holly and Hodges and Jerome so much that he's like, God, I got to get them into this story somehow. How can I do it? And yes, it is very, very coincidental in the fact that, Tina, Peter's younger sister, just so happens to be friends with Brenda, Jerome's younger sister, and she was going to go to the boy band concert with them, and, where they avert the explosion in Mr. Mercedes. And it's just very, hey, it's Ka, I guess, right? Destiny or whatever. But there is just still some peculiar coincidences. Maddie hit it right on the head, and I completely concur, echoing some of my sentiments. Okay, Jane Adams says, Jaime, I have taken your advice on starting to read Stephen King. I have read Jerusalem's Lot, and now I'm starting Salem's Lot. Man, Jerusalem's Lot is badass. If you want to talk about stuff that's got kind of that Lovecraft vibe in some ways, with the rats and the wolves and all that other stuff. And really, they're actually developing Jerusalem's Lot as a television series currently. And that's actually an upcoming video that I've been wanting to do together for a while, because I have a spreadsheet. I have multiple spreadsheets for Here on Hail to Stephen King. One with episodes, and actually I've plotted out episodes through the end of the year, with the exception of like a couple empty slots, like if we do actually get the stand this fall, like they're saying. And we're kind of discussing some more tier ranking stuff, Cecil and myself, for a tier ranking of the movies, because I have counted down the film. Second part of that is coming later this month, as is the 5th tier ranking of the books. But yeah, I essentially have programming through the rest of the year into January at this particular point. I've got all the books of the month plotted out and so on and so forth. But I also have a separate spreadsheet that is all about every King project that is in development. And I've been wanting to do a video about that, but it's just not as evergreen as stuff continues to roll out. But they're making a Jerusalem's Lot television series, and just the history of the inbreeding and the satanic worship, all the crazy shit. I mean, it's really compelling stuff. So Jane, I hope you have a fantastic time. Salem's Lot is terrific. It's actually going to be the book of the month later this year in October, so you can look forward to that, because it's going to be that's the 45th anniversary of Salem's Lot is this October. How crazy is that? Who feels old? Anyway, so Roger chimes in and says, I personally think this is the weakest of the 3. Okay, well, as I always contend, Roger, on this, to each their own, and art is subjective. I know a lot of people who love End of Watch, and I border on I don't loathe or detest it, but I really am just not a big fan of that book, especially. And they give hints as to what's going to transpire in End of Watch at the very end of this book. I'd actually forgotten that, because I read this book 5 years ago when it first came out, and this was actually my first time revisiting it. I both listened to it and reread it, and I gotta say, I know Andrew T is a big fan of the audiobooks and stuff, as am I. I love to read it and listen to it, and we get Will Patton back narrating, and Patton is tremendous for the Hodges trilogy, and I believe he also does The Outsider, and he did If It Bleeds, so he's one of those really prolific audiobook narrators for Cy King. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of End of Watch, as I said. So, but if you're not a big fan of this one, hey, it's totally coolio, totally coolio. Okay, Maddie chimes in once more and says, I agree, Morris is a nicely complex villain. I find him a much better fleshed out and nuanced character than Brady, who feels more like an over-the-top caricature of a bad guy to me. Peter was my fave. Yeah, Andrew, damn right, man. Peter is such a cool, compelling kid. And that's actually another video that I've been batting around an idea for, is I want to do coolest King kids. So I would talk about Peter. I would obviously talk about Jack Sawyer. I would talk about Jake Chambers. Obviously, there's lots and lots of, like, Barkley. I mean, yeah. Excuse me, the Garfield. Anyway, that's a video that I'm thinking I want to do at some particular point. Maddie says King should have cut out the Hodges gang, to be honest. Yeah, totally agree. Oh, we have our first super chat from Austin, always giving some awesome support and significantly appreciated. We have 19 peeps in the chat right now, but only 4 likes. If y'all could be red status badasses and hit the like button, it definitely helps with the algorithm and with the monetization for us. So yes, it just takes one quick little thumbs up. So it's much, much appreciated, everybody. Okay, so Austin says, I feel like Morris's obsession with the Runner trilogy reflects people's obsession with the Dark Tower. Yeah, there's no joke about that, especially with the ending to the 7th book. Yeah, and at this point, yes, he had put out Wind Through the Keyhole at this particular point. I knew it was at least a few years before this and stuff, but yeah, I'm one of those obsessive tower junkies, as Eddie Dean described them. And yeah, so, okay, as we continue cruising. Austin, thanks so very much for the donation. It means a hell of a lot, man. Helps us out with keeping the lights on and all of the craziness. Okay, MR Stover says, this is awesome. I literally finished Finders Keepers last night. Hell to the Izzow. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, Jacob, my dude Jacob, we gotta hear what he has to say. Low-key, my favorite character was actually the hippie English teacher. Yeah, Mr. Ricker. And yes, he seems like there's, okay, so as somebody who grew up and was trying to write and was like, my favorite classes were like English and history, whereas I had a lot of friends who were into like the math and science side of things. So that's just where the side of my brain just always just kind of, I don't know, migrated and was inclined and so on and so forth. But they say that if you're into reading and writing and things of that nature, you always have a particular teacher that helps to just foster and just, I don't know, pour gasoline on that proverbial fire, if you will. And I remember very distinctively when I was in 7th grade, I had a teacher named Miss Usselman, and she was as demanding as pretty much like I had like high school teachers. I was in 7th grade here in the States. I had high school and college teachers that were nowhere near as demanding as this woman. And she was the one who introduced me to stuff like, you know, How the Baskervilles and, you know, Joseph Conrad stuff, Bradbury, and all these different things. And so I doubt I would have, and she was very demanding, making us learn all the prepositions. And I mean, really, just for a 7th grader, for a kid who's like 13 years old, I was like, damn, this is insane. But I would not have had the just appreciation of writing if not for the difference that she made in my life and everything that she opened my eyes up to. And that's really, as Jacob was pointing out, the thing that even though Ricker is a very small character, he's only in a few bits and pieces, he plays a very pivotal role in just the development of Peter, and especially since we basically follow Peter for, you know, from 13 all the way to when he's about to graduate high school. Now, granted, it skips around timeline-wise, but nonetheless, he makes it very plain and clear that there is something incredibly satisfying about an educator just passing along that fire, that appreciation, that inspiration to somebody else. And so, yes, I totally agree. The hippie English teacher, it felt like an extension of King during the time when he was a teacher, found those passages fun to read. Yeah, exactly. And that's where, as Jacob and I both pointed out separately so far here in the video, is that King, it's the whole write what you know thing, right? And he most definitely, you can tell that King would have been a pretty awesome teacher to have, whether it's, you know, a writing class or English class or whatever. I just the way he has written educators previously in other books and this one as well. King would have been, I wish King could have taught my class, man. Okay, Nepson jumping in. As far as author-obsessed King villains go, Morris and Annie are more complex, but I still like Jim Dooley is the worst of the 3. Okay, bloody hell, I just typed that, and then you go and mention it. Yeah. But still, man, nonetheless. Maddie chimes in. King talking about writing is always compelling, and it was great to revisit the dialogue between writer and fan. When Bill comes in the book, gets bad, says Andrew. Not as bad as book 1, but I still feel King should have done Finders Keepers as a standalone book. Maddie says, I wonder if FK actually started out as a standalone. Exactly, and it was like kind of retrofitted. So I was kind of curious about as well. Alex jumps in and says, just finished reading it and started Misery yesterday. Well, both of those are fantastic books, and I hope you have some awesome experiences with them, Alex. Okay, MR Stover says, I put off reading FK for so long because Mr. Mercedes was one of my least favorite King books, so it was possible that my expectations were too low that I enjoyed it so much. Hey, something I talk about here on The Horror Show all the goddamn time is the burden of expectation, man. And the burden of expectation, it can happen with any form of creativity, any form of self-expression or art, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book. I mean, happens to me, unfortunately, all the time with horror films and TV series and stuff that we cover on here. And it's even happened occasionally with King books. So, I mean, happens to the best of us, MR. So, Malito chimes in and says, man, the Cool Kids video is a dope idea. You have a ton to choose from for the different books. English teacher pictures King, Big Beard, 70s Big Beard, Bucktooth King, or Present Day King. Oh, man, I imagine King back in the day when he was still on sauce and acting a little wacky. I would imagine he might have been a little bit more interesting and eccentric and stuff like that. So that could have been interesting. Okay, Austin chimes in and says, also, Ricky validates that everything is stupid. Yes, I was going to say, this is stupid. You know, just the reaction so many people, especially kids, when they're like, you have to read this. You have to read Great Expectations, even though I love Great Expectations. And I love pretty much all the Dickens that I read, Tale of Two Cities. And I read Christmas Story every single year. But yeah, there's some of that mandatory reading that I just have a lot of friends, unfortunately. They were, I'm wearing a basketball jersey, for God's sake. I was one of those few kids that I was pushed to sports from my parents because my dad played, high school football and he coached soccer and things like that. And then my mother played college basketball. So I was pushed to sports, but yet I inherently gravitated towards creativity, like reading and things like that. And my family members, they're not like hardcore readers, unfortunately, and they never have been. And so that like just art and self-expression, whether music, movies, stuff like that, I found that on my own accord in a lot of ways. And so it's nice to have a balance, but nonetheless, I was friends with a lot of people who just didn't have the same appreciation that I did. And I've tried my damnedest to convert many of them over time, but I liked all the books, including The Outsider and If It Bleeds. I'm assuming Mark is referring to just anything Hodges Holly related and stuff. So 21 peeps in the chat. So let's just get into at least some of the notes and stuff like that. So this John Rothstein character, Rothstein, whatever, he was on the cover of Time magazine when JFK was elected president. And like this book starts out with a bang, which is one of the reasons that I enjoy it so much. And since my voice is getting a little hoarse, I'm going to have a little bit more cold brew. But yeah, the fact that this is a guy who, he had 2 ex-wives and one of them is dead and the other one is like still draining alimony money from him. And he became very prolific in the early 60s. And then basically when we meet him at the beginning of the book, when he has these home invaders led by Morris and a couple other guys, it's 1978. And he's been in hiding for a while, and yet he had still been writing, but he hadn't published anything. And it's this Runner trilogy, this Jimmy Gold trilogy of stories that he is most known for, and that Morris, who is in his early 20s when we first meet him in 1978, is absolutely obsessive about. And so there's 3 different in this trilogy. So there's the Runner, then there's the Runner Sees Action, and then the third one is the Runner Slows Down. And this is where these books obviously meant a lot to this character, Morris. I mean, so much so that he would break into the New Hampshire just isolated domicile, of this writer that he is just borderline obsessed about. And he makes it seem with these other cohorts of his that, there's all this money that we can take. But really, his true motives are the fact that he needs to know if Rothstein or Rothstein, whatever, actually revisited this Jimmy Gold character because he hated the way that third book ended with just the cynical nature of what happened with the counterculture, which is a theme that King had explored in Hearts and Atlantis. That quote from Easy Rider, "We blew it," and that's the mentality that a lot of people just had about that counterculture hippie movement, so to speak, is the fact that they were so diehard, anti-war, anti-consumerism, all these different things. And then inevitably, so many of them, in fact, the great majority, became the thing that they hated the most at that particular time in their adolescence and, early 20s and whatever. And so, yeah, The Runner Slows Down is essentially about this character that Morris and many other people, obviously, with as celebrated as Rothstein's work is, became over time. It's almost a slap in the face that this person, just gave in like everybody else. And this character Morris, who was the one who led everybody in for this break-in, he is just absolutely crushed. And he has this confrontation with Rothstein, and because initially, they're just gonna steal the money and steal the manuscripts and everything because he has to know if there's any more Jimmy Gold writing. But the real just pivotal portion of the beginning of the book is the exchange that goes down between Morris and his favorite author, and it inevitably ends with Morris shooting like execution style his favorite author, bang, right in the flippin' head, and he does it after Morris assesses him as such. He says, "It's guys like you who give reading a bad name." And you can probably imagine for an obsessive fan, if your favorite author who has already insulted you, at least as far as you perceive, with, just doing dirty a character you adore so much, if you are then insulted just right to your face by this person that there's that old saying about it's never good to meet your heroes. And I still remember very well. Side note, tangent. I was at an Everclear concert. Yes, Everclear, that post-grunge alternative rock band from, I believe Portland was where they at least originated. But Art Alexakis, the lead singer, songwriter of Everclear. I mean, Sparkle and Fade and So Much for the Afterglow and those songs from an American Movie and stuff like that. I still buy all the records. I still love Art. But there was a time in the mid-2000s where I saw Art Alexakis with this new version of Everclear because the other two guys in the band had quit. And, the previous time I'd seen him, he was in this, like, big amphitheater. And this particular show, he was playing in this very small, dingy little place because the popularity of the band had significantly waned. And so he starts playing one of my favorite ballady sort of songs. And me being stereotypical Fuego and, long-haired rocker idiot and stuff, I hold up a lighter, which is, I know, it's a cliche, but I did it. And lo and behold, Mofo stops the music and calls me out, and he's like, look what this dumbass is doing. This isn't a flipping. He dropped an F-bomb. He's like, this isn't a effing 80s concert. Put that shit away. And I just stood there, and I'm like, man, I had one of my favorite creatives from that particular era of music just basically insult me in front of a crowd of people, and everybody's laughing and all this other stuff. And I was so pissed, I legit wanted to walk out, and I didn't. I totally pooned it up, and I, tail between my legs and all that stuff. But my feelings were so hurt and so bruised. And it's like this dude who was back on drugs and his bandmates had left. And so, he was at his lowest. And I went and proceeded to write a song with my then band at the time about a self-centered little princess still screaming for the spotlight. So bottom line, the point that I'm trying to make is that Morris met his hero, and his hero disappointed him yet again. And so, very impulsively, he kills his hero, and it's rough. And then, in turn, they flee the scene, and he ends up killing the other two guys that he did this robbery with, and and then he ends up in prison for what is supposed to be life, but not for what he expects. Apparently, he gets super faded on Jack Daniels at this bar, and then attempts to rape this woman, and so he has aggravated assault and rape charges and all this other stuff, and throws himself at the mercy of the court, ends up getting life, and he is in there from 1978, 79 through, all the way to 2014, I believe it is when he finally gets out. And we get a little bit of play-by-play as to everything that's going on with him over the course of the time. And he, just before being picked up, he hid the loot and he hid the manuscripts, buried them in this chest. And that is what our Peter Who Cried Wolf kid, Peter Saunders, or Sombers, or whatever it is. Yes, Peter, basically, who is our main kid, our main protagonist, much more so than Hodges and Holly and Jerome when we get the bits and pieces with them. This is really Peter's story and Morris's story, as I've said. And it's a pretty harrowing conflict, I must say. So I'm going to breeze through the comments since I see there is a few bits and pieces that everybody was throwing around. So let's see what we got. I liked all the books. Okay, I saw that. Even liked it when King went to There's Our Second Thoughts. Okay, Emma Stover says, okay, I see people are just kind of conversing back and forth. My favorite compilation since different seasons. Oh, if it bleeds, says Emma Stover. Okay, Jacob chimes back in and says, yes, I must admit, this opening is pretty great up there with some of this other openings such as Cell and It, etc. Yeah, and I still planning on doing a Best King opening video. I've been there's a lot of different notes and bits to take in. There's some videos here on Hail that are much easier to put together, and then there's others that take an exceptional amount of additional research and work and things of that nature. But as I said, it's in the pipeline and it'll be coming. But it's an exceptional opening. It's thrilling, it's harrowing, and yes, it's pretty awesome. Austin says, starts with a bang. Yep, the year JFK was elected. I read it just last week and was very entertained. I liked all the stories. I'm assuming they're talking about if it bleeds. Also, what about that ending? Feel like it was King telling us he'd rather see his unpublished work burned than to get it in the hands of his fans. Yeah, Jacob raises a very interesting point in the fact that, should an obsessive fan really be able to see something that you don't want to present to the world? Because, Ruxpin made a very conscientious decision. He still could not turn off the compulsion to create, but that didn't necessarily mean that he wanted to alter the legacy that he had put together. And it's like, okay, so many fans, they act like, something belongs to them as opposed to the person who has created it. And that's a bit of dialogue that people have had numerous times, in the fact that they're like, okay, when you put art out there, and this is something I've said, is that when you put your creativity out there for all to see, warts and all or whatever, it becomes more than just yours at that particular point. And it's almost like it's public domained to a degree. The right of ownership has changed when, it's present them for everybody to see and judge and love or hate or be indifferent to or whatever. So it's an interesting debate that people have, because, fans do, especially of the most obsessive variety, the diehards, they have an essence of like ownership and entitlement that they cling to when it comes to creativity. And yeah, Jacob's definitely right in what happens in the finale with the burning of the manuscripts. It's definitely very serious in the fact that I think that was King addressing the fact that, yeah, I'm never gonna release all 500 pages of the cannibals that he found. He's like, I'm not gonna officially release the plant, and even though I've thought about finishing it. I mean, he's got a number of novels, including that the something sword or whatever it was. And anyway, I mean, there's many videos floating around about unpublished works, unfinished works, and stuff. And so yeah, it's just it's intriguing, and I truly think that an artist, if they don't finish it or if they just don't want to release it, that is obviously their prerogative. But yet, if it does get out there, it's a little bit different of a situation. So, excuses. I took the end as more of a comment on, man, voice is going out on me, peeps. Apologies. On obsession that King's thoughts on his own unpublished works. Well, that too. Okay, Joshua Gordon, this is a name that I had not seen. Just joined the chat. When are you going to rate the remaining King books and movies? Well, next week is going to be the 5th and final of the tier rankings, and then the following week, or actually no, 2 weeks after that. So over the course of this month, you will get the 5th and final of the tier rankings, and you will get the second part of the movie countdown. So that is coming very, very soon. In my opinion, one of the best King beginnings of the 2010s. Okay, so we're almost all caught up, everybody. Maddie also chimes in once again with, I met one of my heroes, Stephen King, and he couldn't have been a friendlier, more down-to-earth guy. He had a great 5-minute conversation with him. That's awesome. Damn, Fuego, what a story. Crazy, yeah. Dave Edmonds jumps in and says, if you were talking best King openings, Cell has got to be in there. Cell is tremendous, dude. I have long championed my love and adoration and how underrated I feel like Cell is. So... okay, Joshua also says, it is the best King opening. This boat sailed out of Derry and out of the story forever. Yeah, that's definitely arguably up there, man. Okay, Andrew also says, I loved how the first, I think, 40 pages back and forth from the 70s to the 2010s. Yeah, and also getting another perspective of somebody else who was at Brady's nasty situation. And that is one cool thing about the Hodges trilogy, is that we get that incident at the job fair at the Civic Center or whatever it is. We get it from the perspective of different victims. And so that's a framing device that of all 3 books, even if I'm not too big in the end of watch, I still like the fact that King told the tale, this horrible incident, from a few different perspectives. I thought that was pretty BA. Okay, it's his decision to release what he wants. Yeah, Andrew, you're totally right, man. Austin also chimes in once more and says, I would really like to read the unfinished King story where women go into the ladies' room and never come out. Okay. I'm going to get another drink of the cold brew because, yeah, I was filming a bunch of stuff yesterday and the voice is just not coming back as much as I would like. So, yeah, man, I mean, just to cruise through, it's really sad just hearing the dilemma that Peter's family finds himself in, because the incident in 2009 is just all about the fact that it was King's commentary about the economic downturn and the housing market crash, and the fact that Peter's father was in the housing market and he loses his job, and then his mother's job is kind of like scaled back a little bit. And so the reason his dad is at the job fair to be injured by Brady, and he's crippled essentially, at least shortly thereafter, and he's messed up on oxys, and he can't find work, and they have to move from the west side of town where they were near Jerome and Brenda's family, and Peter's younger sister was friends with Jerome's little sister, and yet they end up having to move to a worse income area of town, and he's worried his parents are going to get divorced because it's just like a snowball going downhill sort of situation. And the way King writes Peter's despair, most notably, there is this bit where talks about Peter's disabled father popping 4 oxys a day, parents on the verge of divorce, they're broke, relocated. Yep, I mentioned all of that. And okay, so this is page 41, paragraph 4. This was a bit that I found quite amusing, and this is what I was just referencing. So King basically he almost frames this like a script essentially, and so it's like, meanwhile, silence your cell phones and turn off your pagers. Remember those? The lights are going down, and this afternoon's installment of We're in Deep Shit is about to begin. And this is basically the way Peter perceives the back and forth between his mother and his father. His father has finished the wine. He's been smoking inside. He can barely walk, obviously. Mother comes home early this particular day. Father is hopped up on oxy, so from all the pain. So he's always forgetting, that mother comes back from work earlier on this particular day, so on and so forth, whatever. And it just goes into Tom. Hey, you're home early. Linda, Tom, it's Tom. Wednesday, right? Early day at the library. You've been smoking in the house again. I can smell it. Just one in the kitchen with the window open. There's ice on the back steps, and I didn't want to risk a tumble. Peter forgot to salt them again, as he should know, since and it just goes back and forth, and it's really just the play-by-play, I don't know. King frames it like a script. It's incredibly amusing to me, but We're in Deep Shit. It's just, you sympathize so terribly with the fact that there were just throngs of people who found themselves in this exact same situation after the American economic downturn in just right around 2009, 2010. And it's just, it's incredibly sad. And you sympathize immensely with Peter and with the situation. But this is about the time where he finds that stash that Morris, shortly before taken into prison, but not for the stuff he was anticipating, had hidden. And he finds manuscripts, and of course he finds like over $20,000. And so he anonymously starts sending it to his family, and everything improves. His dad's health improves, their financial status improves. And as the years go on, because we jump from 2009 to 2014, so he goes from 13 to like 18, you know, he's a senior in high school now, as opposed to a little 13-year-old, and it makes you feel very satisfied and happy to see that things turned around for this particular family, and that the harmony has been restored, and everything has become better from this silent benefactor that is in fact Peter. But the well is about to dry up, and as King repeats over and over, there must be more money. There must be more money. And that's a line from a book that Peter has read. And so he's like, okay, there's no more money to send to my family. What the hell are we going to do? Tina, my younger sister, is trying to go to this like elite educational academy where Jerome's little sister Brenda goes. And, so this is where he finally starts to realize, he's like, should I try to sell some of these manuscripts? And that's where we get to meet Mr. Ricker, the aforementioned hippie teacher of his, and you do hear more about just the extent of the impact that he had on Peter's life, and it's really cool stuff. And this is where he learns about Andy, or Drew, the gay friend, just kind of former friend at least, of Morris all those years ago, back in 1978. He was the one who he didn't so much goad Morris into doing it, but he planted the proverbial seed in Morris's head of trying to go confront Rothstein, and basically try to rob him and steal manuscripts and do all this other stuff, just to see if Jimmy Gold had more adventures that just never saw the light of day. And that's who Peter decides to go and consult and try to sell some of these poems and short stories and stuff like that. But he has become obsessed with the Runner series himself, most notably the redemptive arc that Jimmy Gold has in the 4th and the 5th books, which are called The Runner Goes West and then the runner raises the flag. And it's just such irony because the fact that it is the sort of just redemptive, the Wheel of Ka coming around full circle that Morris just wanted so badly to read and just feel just satisfaction about, because he identified so much with the Jimmy Gold character. And I mean, he discovered the character from, getting himself in trouble and, as opposed to getting detention or whatever, this teacher of his in some flashbacks gives him the runner back in the 60s, 70s, whatever it was. And he loves it. He absolutely loves it, reads all the books, becomes obsessive. And so this is obviously just the relatability. Peter potentially had relatability reading these stories, as did Morris when he was probably like of a similar age. And so, yeah, just this obsession, the redemptive arc, what Morris so badly wants to read. But for that reason, Peter's like, no, I'll try to sell all the other stuff, man, but I'm not gonna give away The Runner Goes West and The Runner Raises the Flag. But yeah, he finds himself mixed up with this former acquaintance / kind of friend of Morris's right around the time that Morris is finally released from prison. All these years later, and after years of somehow getting by in prison by writing notes and letters and stuff for different guys and getting protection for his butthole and his mouth. Not to get super gross, but yeah, there's King chronicles the extent of the abuse that he goes through. And you know what? With the horrible, nasty act that he did, rightfully so, every bit of retribution that Morris's character goes through, he deserves every single thing for how horrible of a character he is. But it's when King goes into that backstory of just, his father leaving and becoming this troubled youth and, his mother scrutinizing him and all this other stuff. It does give that sort of levity and gravitas and stuff to the Morris character. But yeah, so once again, the coincidence aspect that was mentioned earlier here in the comments, yeah, it is. There's so many coincidental things all happening at once, from the fact that Peter, right at the time that Morris is getting released, decides to sell the manuscripts, gets caught up with this former friend, this Andy, this Drew guy, who deals with rare books and stuff like that, who proceeds to blackmail Peter. And at the same time, Morris goes and tries to confront his old friend after he sees that his treasure chest is no longer there. So it's all of these things all coalescing conveniently at around the same time. And I mean, nonetheless, it's also the time when Hodges and Holly, and then eventually coming back from Harvard, Jerome, finally show up. But yeah, I mean, once we fast forward and to just get to the crux of the real conflict, that's where I'm not going to say the story's bad, but as some have pointed out, this is when the story, it kind of loses just the slightest bit of steam. Although I do find the confrontations that inevitably go down with Morris and Andy or Drew, and also with Peter and the Hodges gang and Morris. So yeah, what do you think, everybody? I'm gonna just double check the chat scheme here one more time. Okay, it was great beginning. Okay, okay. Jacob chimes in once more. Do you think about? Okay, do you ever think about like King canon, like when Morris was killing Rothstein, the Overlook blew up the year before. The year later, Johnny Smith was in his accident. So as far as like maybe there's almost reverberations throughout the entire King verse when these big pivotal moments happen. So they're like happening like here, one thing is happening, and then on a different level of the tower, another thing is happening simultaneously. That's an interesting correlation, Jacob. I'd never thought about that, but with the fact that King very deliberately set stuff around particular times, both in American history and so on, I could definitely see him thinking to that high of a degree of just intertwinement and intersecting correlation. Jordan Clark says, even the TV show adaptation of this book was decent. The book was better, of course, but still, they did a good job on it. And that's one thing. I have not seen the third season of Mr. Mercedes, the television series with Brendan Gleeson. And interestingly enough, that's when, so they adapt book 2 as the third season, and they adapted book 3 as the second season. I don't know. It's a little strange. But yes, season 3 of Mr. Mercedes, which was the adaptation of Finders Keepers, I'm going to get to watch that in September because that's when, at least here in the States, it's finally being released on DVD. September 8th, 18th, something like that, I believe is when it's coming out. So I can't compare and contrast, since that's one of the few King things that I have not had the chance to see, regrettably, but I am very much looking forward to it. Jacob continues with saying, don't know why when I read this stuff with specific years, it always makes me think of that. No, that's it's definitely a damn good point, man. And there's a lot of levity, and I don't know, with as detailed and thought out as King stuff is, I would most definitely not put anything like that past him. Okay, Maddie says that The Shining and It are works of fiction in the Mr. Mercedes universe, so those things didn't happen. Interesting. And that is, Maddie does raise an intriguing point there, because of the fact that in the Mr. Mercedes level of the tower, so to speak, Shawshank Redemption is one of Holly's favorite scores, as she mentions in this book when she's going on this road trip to Cincinnati to see her mother, I think. And she's driving the Mercedes, of all things, which I find it so ironic that in both this book and in the previous book, the Hodges gang is like going romping around in the very Mercedes that Brady killed all those people with. It's just a very odd kind of, I don't know, I've always found it kind of strange. King obviously did it deliberately. It's like this force of evil is being turned around and used as a force for good or whatever. But I was always kind of amused by that. But on this particular level of the tower, to echo even more so what Maddie said, like, remember in Mr. Mercedes, everybody, if you've read it, that Bill Hodges mentions Pennywise the Clown from that TV movie or TV series or whatever. So yes, in this particular turn of the wheel level of the tower, whatever have you, this particular this part of this pocket of the multiverse, basically, there is most definitely a cognizance of King adaptations. Even if I don't believe he's ever mentioned by name, the works of adaptation for his stuff is at least in the public consciousness, so to speak. Okay. Austin says, could Pete's dad opiate addiction be a nod to King's own dependency after his accident? Austin, you hit it right on the head, man. That is most definitely, the fact that he gets run over and he almost dies, and then, he's addicted to the painkillers, as King has mentioned many times, in Dreamcatcher. When he was writing Dreamcatcher, he was all hopped up on the meds, and it really made the writing style and even just the process very painful and difficult for him. So yeah, Austin, that is most definitely a nod that we had in this particular book. It's the whole right what you know thing, and yeah, King most definitely made that correlation and distinction here. Faux show, absolutely. It was a point I was actually going to get to, but you definitely beat me to it, good sir. Dale Strunk is here. What is up, man? Thanks, Dale, very much for just the comments and the support on all kinds of different stuff here on the Horror Show recently. Very happy that you've been enjoying the content. You've been carrying the torch for us recently, man, and we always appreciate that support. Okay, Chance Mooney jumps in and says, Finders Keepers is actually one of my favorite books. I love how it's all about the love for literature. Yeah, it is definitely, as I said earlier in this video, it's a love letter to literature, and I don't think a famous author would berate one of their biggest fans by saying it's guys like you who give reading a bad name, if not for the fact that they absolutely love the essence of writing and reading and the satisfaction that it can bring us, and just all of that emotion and everything. Okay, King should write some more books with Peter. It would be cool to see a spinoff with him. Peter is definitely a character that I dug immensely. I always love like King, and the reason I mentioned the King's Coolest Kids video that I want to do is the fact that he has always written. He writes kids oh so very well. The camaraderie, the naivety. I mean, so many different things. Whether it's The Long Walker Stand By Me, or whether it's the Gerber baby in Garfield in Hearts in Atlantis, or whatever it may be. I mean, obviously, Jack Sawyer and whatnot. He can craft kids so well, and it takes a special type of writer who is still very much in touch with their inner child, as cliched as that phrase may be. It really takes a special sort of understanding and sensibility. I mean, he did a great job just recently with the Institute with those kids. So, I mean, yeah, he still has the skill. It's still a very well-sharpened tool, as he reminded us in even Mr. Harrigan's Phone. I mean, come on, man. King does it oh so very well. And yes, props to that. I would love to see more Peter. I mean, supposed to just returning to Holly Gibney over and over and over. And yes, she's funny, and she says stuff like, homie, don't dance in this. I mean, King obviously gets a kick out of just writing just very wacky OCD kind of dialogue for Holly, and he does it very well in this too. I must definitely imagine. But a voice shouting at the children of the silent 50s to wake up and raise their own voice. That was an interesting description for Sean Rothstein. But okay, looks like there's another super chat that I just saw. Okay, why are you moving around? There you go. Oh, Mike's book reviews, dude. Hey, everybody, I have to give Mike's book reviews a shout out. He just put up his review of The Stand, if I'm not mistaken. Also recent reviews of Cujo. He has a very terrific series exploring the Stephen King multiverse, and he covers all kinds of other Rad Status stuff. The Wheel of Time series, and just lots of fantasy and some sci-fi and things like that. Stuff that is way beyond my realm of comprehension and exploration. So yes, definitely shout out to him. He's been very cool and very supportive, and he is definitely a Tower junkie and a constant reader of the highest accord. So jump over to Mike's Book Reviews. Subscribe, everybody. Check out some of his coverage. So it says, still my favorite of the Bill Hodges trilogy. In fact, he even wrote a fictional version of Holden Caulfield into the book that I liked more than the one actually in Catcher in the Rye. And I've never read Catcher in the Rye, Mike, and I know that you just recently did it was I haven't watched it yet, but Mike recently did a review about some of these celebrated works of literature that he was slightly underwhelmed by, and I believe when I saw your thumbnail, you were holding up Catcher in the Rye. It's one that I was not forced to read because of the fact that at the Christian private school that I went to, they were not fans of Catcher in the Rye. So Catcher in the Rye, interesting song from Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy. Anyway, Austin chimes in here and says, just a side note that I can't pass up, the code to Andy safe. Yep, I saw that too. 9118. Yep, 99. Exactly. Brady's room is, yep, exactly, man. King thinks these things up pretty goddamn well, man. I gotta say. I mean, so Austin, thank you so much for the donation, dude. It's supremely appreciated. Jimmy Gold was his name, I believe. Correct. Correct to us. So Mike. Maddie chimes in once more and says, will there also be an uncool kids video, or would that be considered bullying? I've thought about that, obviously. I mean, King has that short story in Bizarre Bad Dreams. I'm trying to remember what the hell it was called, about the evil little kid. And it was initially published in German, if I remember correctly, and then it was translated over here. But yeah, I mean, there has to be a yin and a yang, I suppose. So, evil little Gage would definitely be in there. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I would have to get into that. Oh, yeah. Best King Bullies would be a great video. Number one, Henry Bowers. Damn Risley. Except for the way they did Henry Bowers in that new version, man. I didn't like Mullet Bowers, man. I actually echo a lot of Mike from Mike's Book Review sentiments about that new adaptation of it. But anyway, we're on the second page rounding out stuff about here in Finders Keepers. I must also say that I'm very amused by Jimmy Gold's mantra of shit don't mean shit, and it's something that helps Morris's character get through his time in prison, as he gets life for the rape and the assault and all that stuff on the woman after he's like super just blasted on the Jack Daniels and everything. But yeah, he somehow, every time he goes up for to get his appeal or whatever, or just to get released early, the woman keeps coming back and just expressing the horrible just trauma and how just she's still messed up to this day. So they're like, nope, you are not getting released. Nope, you're not getting released. And he just keeps telling himself, anytime things don't go his way, shit don't mean shit. Shit don't mean shit. So another bit that I wanted to read, this is page 136, paragraph 3. I'm trying to remember. A good writer realizes that he's a secretary, not God. Something that Morris's mother says to him at one particular point, and it's something he just completely disagrees with. He is not a fan of that sentiment, and that just really, that's Morris's mother echoing the way King feels. King is one where he champions not wanting to use outlines and all this other stuff. He just lets the story go where it needs to. And yet there's a lot of people who completely disagree with that approach. John Grisham, for instance, when him and King had that little side-by-side discussion a few months ago into quarantine, and he's like, Steve, I have the complete opposite approach to you. But that's definitely King's mantra, is the fact that, once again, a good writer realizes he's a secretary, not God. So it's like, you sit there and you observe and you help facilitate the story, but you're not playing God. You're not. I don't know. It's very much King in the way that he likes looking at these things. So 136, paragraph 3. Okay, yeah, I found this quite compelling. So for readers, one of life's most electrifying discoveries is that they are readers, not just capable of doing it, which Morris already knew, but in love with it, hopelessly, head over heels. The first book that does that is never forgotten, and each page seems to bring a fresh revelation, one that burns and exalts. Yes, that's how it is. Yes, I saw that too. And of course, that's what I think. That's what I feel. And that's basically the extent of Morris when he first discovers, the runner, when that teacher gives it to him. And so, like, if you are truly passionate about writing and literature, you read that passage and you're just like, that was me. It's like when something clicks with you on a very deep, subliminal, creative level. And I mean, there's nothing like it. It is an incomparable feeling, and it's one of the most satisfying things, especially about reading, and just the personal nature of it, because it's really something you do alone. What am I talking about? I mean, the only way that you can really, not be reading alone is if you're, having a book club sort of thing like we are here. But really, I mean, people, they liked, back when we could go to movie theaters, they loved and relished the communal, just kind of collaborative and, just, I don't know, the group experience of watching a film in theaters. Or if you have friends over and you're all binging like a series on Netflix and you order a bunch of pizza or get a bunch of beer or whatever the hell it may be, that is a communal, almost kind of, it's a group experience. Reading is the most personal sort of creative connection you can make, because it's just you and the words, just you and those pages, and there's just something very, I don't know, intimate about it. And shout out once again to Mike, and I can definitely tell with the way that he reviews Psy King and other things, is that and all of you as well. There's just there's nothing like just making that sort of connection, and just the wonderful, just, I don't know, vibrant feeling that it brings about within us. It's truly there is nothing like it. So and part 2, old friends. I mean, it's interesting how we get like actual kind of chapter breaks in the first part, but then part 2 and part 3 are really just these 100+ page, just like big segments. And that's when we get Kermit, and Hodges has lost 40 pounds, and we get the update about everybody, about how he's got the finders keepers, that he's this investigative agency that he's doing with Holly, and there's the guy who wrote a bad check for a plane. And I'm gonna once again echo sentiments that this is when the story just kind of loses its way just a little bit. But then it gets more interesting when we have the blackmailing between Peter and Andy and Drew, and then him going and hiding the manuscripts, and just all of the stress that he's going through. The way Hodges is folded into the story, though, in the fact that, yes, because Peter's younger sister is worried about him because he's lost weight and he's growing this silly mustache and he's acting weird and getting pimples again and whatever, she goes to her old friend Brenda, Jerome's little sister, and yet they said earlier in the book that when they ran into each other, because they used to live on the west side of town together, or near each other, and they were friends and whatnot, that Brenda barely even remembered him, and yet obviously she remembered Tina enough to go and consult Hodges about just the trouble that Tina thinks that her older brother Peter is getting into. And so Hodges just kind of he's kind of slightly forced into the story at this particular point, but it's still, since I like Jerome's character, I really appreciate Holly's character, even if we've had a lot of Holly at this particular point, and I love Hodges too, but it does still feel a little unnecessary. Like, this story could have really run its course without them becoming involved in it. And we have the bit where Hodges goes to visit Brady, and you find out that Brady is actually regaining some of his cognitive functions and stuff, and so he's no longer in this coma after getting bashed in the head by Holly at the boy band concert and stuff like that in Mr. Mercedes. So I don't know. It's and the book ends with that too. It's like a little epilogue of sorts where Hodges goes and visits him again. And it gives that little hint about what we're going to have with the e-reader and the fish and all that stuff in End of Watch that I just really, was not the biggest fan of. But, you know, nonetheless, it's all good. Morris referring to himself as a wolf. I thought that was kind of interesting. And he's like, I'm you know, this wolf still has teeth and all this other stuff. And yeah, it's pretty brutal when Morris finally confronts Andy and the way that he kills this old friend / acquaintance of his, and then finally going after Peter, kidnapping the sister. I mean, I don't know. It does ramp up, and it's a very thrilling and satisfying conclusion. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, I mean, I'm just looking. It's funny, King mentions moons over my hammy, and he has said on social media so many times his affinity for Denny's. It's just fun. King is a very simple man sometimes, and he just cracks me up in that accord. It's really fun. But I mean, yeah, I think at this particular point, we've touched on the predominance of things we've been going for over an hour. If you guys have any other things to chime in with, I guess bottom line, this is most definitely a love letter to literature, and it's also a cautionary tale about obsessive fandom, about how heroes can at times disappoint us, and also maybe you can love something, but maybe don't put it as much upon a pedestal. Don't make it into more than it actually is. I feel like these are some of the messages that, you know, have a love and a reverence for literature, but don't allow it to just dominate. And like, adoration is different than obsession. Okay, these are like, they have similarities. There's certain aspects of affinity and just appreciation that I mean, they straddle the line a little bit both ways. But yeah, appreciation and obsession, it's like obsession is where it's veering into more possibly negative territory. And I think that's one of the most important messages that King is trying to put forth in this. And really, this is one that had just less like really amazingly memorable quotes, but it's just a very simple, streamlined story that I really, really enjoyed. This is definitely, as you guys will see next week when we put up the 5th and final of the tier list ranking of all the King decades and stuff like that, you will not be surprised by where I put this letter-wise. And so, yeah, Corey, yeah, man. Corey Novak, my dude in Northern Carolina. He threw in some thoughts. Okay. No. Okay. Love all you King reading mofos. Hell yeah, man. Corey, thanks so very much for just the constant support, dude. It's supremely appreciated. Sad that we weren't able to get out to Mad Monster. Looks like they're about to cancel Mad Monster Arizona. They rescheduled it to September. I'm just, I mean, the palaver with all of you has definitely helped me get through a tough last few months as far as just our industry basically drying up as far as film going and reviewing, and just no press screenings. And sometimes we still get our digital screeners and stuff like that, but like the industry has changed drastically. And tomorrow on the horror show, we are actually going to be doing our News and Booze segment, Cecil and myself, tomorrow evening. I think we're going on at 8 Pacific, which I know is really late for a lot of you, but we're doing this shark tier ranking for Shark Week, and we got a ton of shark reviews, the Deep Blue Sea stuff, Open Water, Jaws, The Reef, yeah, tons of different stuff, so look forward to those. But tomorrow night, we're going to be discussing, no doubt, the state of the film industry, that deal between AMC and Universal, and all kinds of horror news developments. So make sure to tune in tomorrow evening here for the live stream on the horror show. That's going to be all news related. But yes, much appreciated. And a grande gracias, obviously, to all of you who have helped these last few just wacky, just sad months, just be that much more bearable and enjoyable. I owe all of you like an immense amount of gratitude in that regard, for sure. Okay, Chance chimes in and says, I have that exact part highlighted in my book, dude. True love never dies. Damn Reezy. Dave Edmonds says, #1 bully, Ace Merrill. And that was the name. It was either Ace or Bowers, for me. But yes, all good suggestions and many more. I felt the same way Morris did the first time I read Harry Potter when I was 8 years old. It is an incomparable feeling. As I said, there's truly nothing like that sort of just invigoration and satisfaction, that terrific literature and that personal aspect that I mentioned about it too. Any plans to visit J.K. Rowling? Okay, that's just them talking back and forth. Okay, did the reveal of the mother being alive after being shot in the head feel like a bit of a cop-out. Yeah. And the fact that, oh, she's okay. She's going to be okay. I don't know, man. Whatever. Hoping to get to End of Watch in the mail today, says Andrew. End of Watch has interesting aspects to it. I will give it that. And the finale, while I have issues with it, it still gets you in the feels, man. Faux show. Austin chimes in once more and says, also another side note, like Norman in Rose Manor, Andy wears English leather. Yeah, King really. King obviously does not like the scent of that stuff, man. He's not a fan. Okay, Mark says, another great show. Your knowledge and enthusiasm for King knows no bounds. Oh, say thank you, man. I appreciate you, Mark. You've been a dedicated supporter and just awesome homie over the interwebs for a long time now, and I cannot say gracias enough, man. When are we doing the Gunslinger? Good question. We will get to that at some particular points. Okay, I can't stop thinking of Teen Wolf for some reason, says Chance Moody. Teen Wolf. As in the Michael J. Fox movie, the Jason Bateman sequel, Teen Wolf 2, TOO to be specific. I hope you're not talking about the MTV series. I know that Cecil is a big fan of it. We all love you, says Fuego. Hey, man, Jacob, I am just here for the palaver with all of you. It brightens my days, my weeks, and my months. And yeah, I think we've essentially got through the predominance of it. I hit all of my different notes. It's funny how, in the end, Peter ends up getting to write about the situation for the New Yorker, of all things. He gets to chronicle just his entire crazy experience with reading the manuscripts and with the obsessive fan, the confrontation with Morris, all that different stuff. That's pretty cool that kid gets to actually write for such a prestigious publication about his experience with, just Jimmy Gold and the obsessive fandom of Morris, the life and death situations that his family found themselves within. Pretty cool, I must say. And once again, you've got King. King loves that dynamic of like the older grandpa type with the younger kid, and I know that's because of the fact that he didn't have a father growing up, and so that's why in a story like Hearts in Atlantis with with Brodigan and Garfield, or even in Mr. Harrigan's Phone, whatever it may be, it's a dynamic King has always written very convincingly, very well, and props in that regard. And yeah, it is a satisfying ending, at least for me, until the epilogue and just the hint of Brady's power, so to speak. So King obviously already had in his head where he was going to go with End of Watch. I still the mind control and the video game e-reader stuff. I don't know, man. I don't know. Red team go. But that is the extent of my thoughts. Dave Edmonds with thanks so very much. Cheers, man. Thanks for all of the support. Any sort of donation goes right back into the machine here. So thanks so very much, everybody. We are rounding things out. It's the shirt, I think. Thanks for all the hard work, Fuego. Hey, Dave, I would be doing it regardless, but it's all of you who just bring so much more enthusiasm. It definitely brings a charge to the proceedings. As if I wasn't motivated enough already, all of you definitely make the process just that much more fun and enjoyable. So I guess that's going to be it, everybody, for Finders, Keepers, Losers, Weepers. That's Reezy. And so that was our July book of the month, y'all. And that means that I can take the notes and put them into my master area. So what is the August book of the month going to be? That's what you asked, right? That's what the inquiry shall obviously be. I'm just going to take one more little sip of my Gandalf cold brew. Well, there's a lot of golden anniversaries. And this is one that is actually just about to celebrate its 30th anniversary. It was published in 1990. And as I mentioned, we have, I've already plotted out the books of the month throughout the rest of the year. I already spoiled that October is going to be Salem's Lot for its 45th anniversary. But this month in August, for its 30th anniversary, we will be doing the second collection of novellas, 4 Past Midnights. That's what y'all can, it's a biggie. It's a biggie small. You've got 4 different tales. The Sundog being a personal favorite. Library Policeman, another awesome one. This is almost 800 pages, everybody. So I'm glad that we're doing this at the very beginning of August because of the fact that this is going to be one that takes some time to get through for some people, I would imagine. I will end up reading it and listening to it as well. It's been a while since I've checked this one out. They have already adapted 2 of these stories. They adapted The Langoliers and they adapted Secret Window, Secret Garden. So both of those have been made already. I've really been wanting to see a remake of The Langoliers for a while because unfortunately I did a anniversary review of the miniseries with Dude from Perfect Strangers in it and all that stuff. That's one that does not hold up very well, but the source material, The Langoliers, is a dope book. So next month at the beginning of September, it's going to double check the calendar. So Saturday, September 5th is when we will be doing our next book of the month. It will be a live review and discussion all about the 4 tales that are contained here in 4 Past Midnight for its 30th anniversary. So look forward to that. I hope that as many of you as possible will be joining me on that particular journey. Let's see what everybody's got going on. Okay. Mark says, take it easy. Going back to horror in book 3. Spooky says, see you tomorrow. Hell yeah. Love to talk about The Library Policeman, says Austin. Yeah, that one is great. It's got almost like kind of a Pennywise-ish, Dandelo kind of thing going down with the villain there, which I really, really dig. Okay, I just finished that book. Laughing Out Loud, says Andrew T. Love 4 Past Midnight. It is pure awesome. The Langoliers audiobook is painful. Willem Dafoe doing the voice of a teenage girl is rough. I've never listened to it, but I guess I'm going to have to go through that arduous process, Maddie. Dave Edmonds says, all 4 novellas in this one are high quality. Yeah, and in some ways, as much as everybody loves different seasons better because of, Shawshank and The Body, obviously, I'm not too big on the breathing method. And so that is the weak link, obviously, and it's the reason why that still hasn't been adapted, although I know Scott Derrickson is working on it. But I'm going to echo those sentiments that Dave just said. I feel like all 4 of these, there is no missing link. There is no weak entry. All 4 of these stories are very, very strong. Sharon says, really great collection. Maddie says, come with me, son. I'm a policeman. Might give 4 Past Midnight a miss, but I've read the rest of the anniversary stuff this year already. Enjoy the rest of your day, my man, Jacob. You as well. Sharon says that Library Policeman is creepy as fuck. Sundog is beast, says Andrew T. Yes, I look forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then for an upcoming thing, I just finally picked these up, everybody. And I've actually never read any of them. I've been wanting to have the complete Tower Concordance for a while. They revised it and updated it. I had the older version, and I've been wanting to pick up this revised and updated for a while. And then these are 2 things that Bev Vincent did. So Bev Vincent did the Dark Tower Companion, and then he also did The Road to the Dark Tower. So these are basically him going through the process, exploring Stephen King's magnum opus. I've been debating about actually doing reviews of these or not, maybe September 19th, because that is a Saturday, and I want to do something Tower-related for that. Or I could do some Dark Tower comic stuff. That's another thing. But I'm curious if anybody has checked any of these 3 things out. And if so, I've never read any stuff where people are actually discussing the Dark Tower as opposed to just consulting the Tower stuff themselves. But yeah, that Tower Concordance that Robin Firth put together, that's been something that I've been wanting for a while. So we are at about the 90-minute mark, everybody. So I once again extend a grande gracias to everybody who tuned into this review and this discussion. It was so much more enjoyable because of the presence of all of you. I have been Jaime in Fuego, and you can find Moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Here on YouTube, I do also have my own channel called In Fuegotainment. If you just go youtube.com/Jaime in Fuego, just the way I spell my name. A like, a share, subscribe, check out any of the content that I have over there. Would be supremely appreciated. And obviously, please do the same thing here on the horror show. All of you are rad status badasses. And I've got some music stuff to get to. So I'm going to call it a day, everybody. And until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, constant readers and viewers alike. Say thank you for spending some time with me today. I'm hopeful that we share more of this King palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King next month or Past Midnight. All right, everyone. Much appreciated. Whatever time it is on your side of the world, I hope you all have an exceptional remainder of your day. And thanks again for making mine so much better. Bam. Never to see any other way.